Welcome back to another creative exploration with me, Tammy Collins. Today we're going to do this mixed media intuitive doodle. This is one of my favorite exercises to do in my daily creative practice. So I'm going to start, as I always do, I like to tape the paper onto the board. It just gives it more mobility and flexibility for me to take it and move it around. I'm using a basic watercolor kit here with some basic colors. This is a inexpensive pearlescent watercolor tray that, as you know, if you've followed me, I picked that up at a thrift place. So I did wet the front and the back of this paper, which I have noticed has made a tremendous difference in cutting down on the curl of the paper or the warping of the paper. So I literally had just taken a brush with some water and just wiped it quickly across the back and the front. I did the whole entire thing. I didn't try to saturate it. I just tried to wet it. And now I'm just applying those colors here randomly. This is an intuitive exercise. I'm just doing what comes to me naturally. The goal here is to just put these colors on the paper. I don't have a direction. I don't know what I'm doing. The only idea I had was that I wanted to add in a reverse technique, if you will, where I black out part of it. And I'm not really sure how I want to go about doing that. And I did want to incorporate circles. So those are the only two things that sort of popped into my head that I wanted to use. At this point, I don't really know what I'm going to do with those. But that's the point of a intuitive, creative time. I know the intuitive word is really kind of popular or trendy right now, if you will, but it really is a great way to sort of just talk about, or for you to understand that you're just letting your inner voice sort of guide your actions. In other words, if you are sitting down with a piece of paper and all of a sudden it pops in your head, oh, I want to use watercolor. Okay, then follow that, use watercolor. And then you're drawn to the red and the blue. Okay, so use the red and the blue. Just follow those natural thoughts that pop into your mind. That's really what doing an intuitive creative exercise looks like. You're experimenting and trying things. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece right now. I'm just playing around with some ideas that I had, and I want to see what they do. That's how you learn what you love and what speaks to you, and it begins to create what your style will be. I spent way too much time in my life worrying about, well, what kind of artist am I and what am I trying to create and you know, what's my story and all these things, and I got so overwhelmed that I just stopped doing things. And I finally realized it has nothing to do with any of that. And so when you begin to let that go, you really start to explore what your creativity is. And so now I'm just adding in some metallic. I'm using similar colors to what I've already used. All I'm really trying to gain here is to add in a visual difference between the surface or reflection of what's on the paper. And so in the finished piece, when you hit it, when you see it a different way or it hits light differently, you have these subtle like reflections that happen because of this pearlescent color. And so I'm just playing around with that a little bit. I hope you are enjoying this very cold time. I think most of the United States is under a very cold weather pattern, and we've had a lot of snow and a lot of crazy things. You can see I've got my little wrist warmers on. I think these are actually like for your boots. I think they're like a sleeve you put on over your sock and your pant under your boot. I love them as arm warmers. They work really nicely because they have sort of a tight band and it fits right above my elbow. I just really love it. So this piece I did over several different days of creative time. I've had a lot of things going on lately, and it's been a little bit challenging to to focus solely on one specific creative time. So I try not to let that prevent me, and that's a really good tip and point. Life gets in the way and things happen, and it's hard sometimes to commit. So if you've decided that you wanted to spend an hour every day creating, and there's some challenges around that, don't beat yourself up about it. I mean, if you can only squeeze in 30 minutes, then do that. And that's kind of what happened with this piece. I kept deciding to add things, and so it took me out of the realm of time that I allowed. And that's okay. So this is over a course of several days. And so now what I'm doing is something that's really fun to do. This is a great exercise if you don't know what you want to do. I'm using a gel pen, and I'm just kind of outlining the watercolor areas. So it doesn't require a whole lot of thought. It's very meditative. There's no right or wrong, and you can just kind of go along and flow with that idea. I love to do this. This is a really great exercise. It really gets the creative juices flowing. It's very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. And you can take it to whatever level you would like. And so you see I skip forward a little bit just to kind of show you. You can get as crazy detailed with this as you want. As you begin to sort of focus in on the edges of the watercolor, you'll start to see more and more of them. Some of them are very subtle and harder to see, but the more you do this, the more they kind of appear. So you can take it to whatever level or degree you would like. And as I'm looking at this now, I have an idea that maybe I'll try next time of coloring in those shapes with different shades so that they appear farther away and some appear closer, which is something I've been toying with in a lot of my pieces, is that depth effect. If you're new here, welcome. I'm happy that you're here. I hope you enjoy watching my process, if you will. I'm not sure I would really call it a process. It's more of it's more of my creative journey, really. I'm just sharing what that looks like. And if you're returning, I'm so glad that you've come back. I hope to be inspiring you to establish some sort of creative journey and exploring what that means to you. Your creative space might be drawing, it might be writing, it could be so many different things, but just taking that time to follow those subtle little voices in your head is so important. And so you can see you can keep going. You can go further and further and further. It just depends on where you feel happy with how far you've taken it. Okay, so now I'm going to come back and see, I'm getting a little obsessed with some of those shapes. So what I'm doing now is just some abstract doodling on here. It's completely free flow. I'm not really thinking about what's happening. And I know that seems super random, but I love the way that the final outcome of this exercise looks. And especially, I love applying it as a layer within a piece. So now if I would have just done what I talked about, shading some of those first outlines of the watercolor, it would really have a lot more depth. It does have a little bit now just because some of the watercolors are a little bit richer or darker. And so now what I'm doing is I'm kind of following the intuitive doodle, and I'm just sort of rounding off the corners, and I'm giving the lines a little bit more presence by going over it again. And this process is also extremely therapeutic. It's very meditative. It's very enjoyable. It's a really great way to unwind. And the key piece with this technique is that because you just sort of almost doodled or scribbled, if you will, large lines across the page in a free-flowing manner, they will crisscross. And wherever they crisscross or intersect, you want to round off that 90-degree corner. And this technique was developed by a psychiatrist. I can never remember his name. I'm completely blank at the moment. I've mentioned it before. It'll come to me. I apologize. I'm having a brain fart. And I won't keep you too long here on this, so you don't, I just want you to get the idea. Oh, it's neurographic art, and that was created by a professor. I think he's Polish. I'll get the information for you. I can never remember. Anyway, he's a psychologist, and he created this method. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to Pavel Piskarev. He's a psychologist. And he has a very specific process and way you go about that. And I'm sort of applying some of those techniques here and giving it my own spin. So here you can see now I've done that whole process on the whole page. And now I want to incorporate these circles that I was thinking about. I'm not overthinking it. I'm just kind of putting them on there. And what I'm thinking about is that I want to create sort of a positive and negative space. And the shapes within the space, I want to remain the watercolor and the doodle. And of course, I know you're probably saying, well, why did you do the whole page? I said, well, you'll see why in a minute, because what I did at the time, I didn't know I was going to apply the black. It just came over me to do it, but that's okay. But what happened is you'll see here in a minute that the pen, the gel pen, the lines are like, you can kind of see the indentation, if you will, through the black. So I went over those with white, so I could basically recreate what I had already done. I know it feels like you're doing it multiple times, but that's part of the process and figuring out what you like and what you want to do. I really like how, because I didn't stay within the circle, if I would have created the original part and stayed with inside the circle, I don't think I would get the same effect, because having the restraint of the circle would have affected the shapes and the watercolor and what I was trying to do. So it was an experiment. And so this is just black gesso. And I'm just applying it with a brush. I'm just kind of going around the circles. And so after this dries, you can kind of sort of see where those intuitive doodle lines, if you will, the neurographic part, or you can kind of see where they are. And so I just went over it with a white Posca marker. Now, I don't know if you can see them there, but they're slightly different texture. They appear, so it's relatively easy. So I really was happy about that, because afterwards I thought, oh, well, this wasn't my original intention. So this just came about because I saw those lines and I thought, oh, well, now I can kind of redo that part, which was a fun surprise. So see, there you go. I've redone that part. And now I'm just coming back and doing the same thing and creating the rounded corners, if you will. I think this Posca pen has kind of had it. So you can see I'm kind of making my way around here. I don't want to get you too hung up on following every tiny detail. I'm just trying to show you what this phase of the process looked like in case you wanted to do it. We're in for some more snow today. It's a bit of a challenge for me. I live on the side of a cliff. I have quite an incline. It's rugged terrain, and so that kind of weather makes it a little bit challenging. But that's okay. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm perfectly happy being snowbound. So because I worked on this piece over a couple of days, I did this, and then I kind of got to a point where I left it alone. A bunch of things happened. I didn't work on it for a couple of days. I was trying to decide, am I done with it? Am I not done with it? And then yesterday, I decided to work on it a little bit last night, which I didn't record that part, but that's okay. I'll explain what I did. Okay, so now I'm just using my Tombow in a gray to add in some shadows. And then I'm taking a tiny bit of water and just sort of spreading that around just a little bit. Because the Tombow is a water-based marker, it allows you to do that. I don't want the circles to feel so flat. I ended up adding a bunch of tiny stippling to those shadows as well to accentuate them a little bit more. But I did that part last night, so there is no actual recording of that, but I'll show you where you'll be able to see where that happened. And by stippling, I just mean taking the gel pen in black and just adding dots in a very tight manner, and then slowly loosening up the pattern so that it becomes less dense. The denser the dots are, it acts like dark shading, and then it gives you a gray scale, if you will. Okay, so I've come back now. This is a day later, and I feel like I want to make those white lines a little bit darker. I'm a little removed from the creativity of this, so I'm just doing that as a means to also sort of relax me and get me back into this piece so that the intuition can take over again. So I opted to go with a lot of dots on this. Again, very therapeutic, easy process to play with. And I'm just sort of outlining each shape with a series of white dots. And part of the work that I did last night as well that isn't recorded is adding in even more dots. So you'll see how that progresses and you'll be able to tell what the difference is. And it was really just a matter of adding more to what I had already done. I wanted to feel a little bit more visually interesting. And, you know, the closer you have dots, the denser it is, the farther away it feels. So now I'm just going to create a shape within what I just created, meaning that I'm going to, I keep playing with those lines. But basically what's going to happen is I'm going to create a line shape within the dots. So it's reducing the size of that shape. Okay, so see, there you go. I'm just adding the line within the dots. So it creates another shape inside. So I'm going to do that process, and then I'm going to create some doodle inside that shape. And then I created even more design within that last night. Okay, so see, now I have outlined all of the, there you go, there's the doodle. It's just a scribble, a doodle, whatever you want to call it, inside the shape. And the idea is that the more I create within there, I'm creating pockets that seem farther and farther away. So within the doodle, I will go back and add some white lines and some dots. I did that part last night. And it's really just a repetition of what I've already done. And I also added some dots onto the actual circles. as highlight and shading. So I talked about the black gel pen stippling, but I also used a white Posca pen for the highlight part. And there's a really good shot of the doodle. Okay, so now I'm taking a green Posca that's similar to the tones that I've used in the circle watercolor, and I'm just alternating the white dots with the green. And when I take this project and did it last night, I added in 2 other colors, a different shade, more of an aqua color and more of a yellow color. And I just went back in and repeated this exact process. So that area of dots got a little busier with a couple different colors. And you'll be able to see that here when we get to the final shot. And I also did a little bit more detail. I'll talk about all that in a second. When we get to that picture, I'll show you a little bit more. I always hate to not record once I start recording something, but the moment came over me and I wanted to not be at my in my studio. I was sitting watching television and I didn't want to get the camera out and all that. So I apologize, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so here we are now. This is the finished piece here, you can see. And if you look closely at this, you can see that I've come back in around the circle with a very crisp black line. I did that with a gel pen, and you can really see, like inside the doodle, I used a white gel pen and added some little hash marks, and I added some yellow dots in there as well. And it just makes those spots look really busy. It's hard for you to see this in the picture, but if you were to look closely, you would be able to see them all. And you can also see the stippling around the shading of the circles in both the white and the black. So I really hope you enjoyed this creative exploration, and I'll see you next time.